Hi everyone! In this video, I'll be showing you how to animate in Scratch's Bitmap mode. I've organized this tutorial into two parts. First, a tour of the Scratch editor, and then a walkthrough of my animation process. Let's get started! There are two drawing modes in Scratch, Scratch Bitmap and Scratch Vector. We can switch between the modes by using the purple button at the bottom of the screen. Vector graphics are made out of lines and shapes, so it has a nice, smooth appearance. However, I prefer to use Scratch Bitmap for animation since the coloring process is much easier. Before we start animating, I want to show you a tool that makes this process much easier. Instead of animating directly in Scratch, I recommend using turbowarp.org. TurboWarp looks almost identical to the Scratch editor. The biggest advantage is that it includes a few features that Scratch doesn't have. The main one I'm talking about is the onion skinning tool, which lets you see a faded version of your previous and next frames. Once you're finished animating, you can simply download your project and upload the file back into Scratch. If you'd rather stay in Scratch, you can still create a simple onion skin effect. First, draw your frame as usual. Then, duplicate that costume. On the duplicate, change the drawing to a different color, like purple, so it's easy to tell apart from your original frame. Next, draw over the purple frame with the original color. After that, use the fill tool to cover the costume with the purple, and then erase all of that color. This will be your next frame. It's not as convenient as TurboWarp's built-in onion skinning, but it works well if you just want to animate on Scratch. Okay, now let's get drawing. As I mentioned earlier, I'll be using Scratch's Bitmap mode for this animation. I use a drawing tablet, but you can absolutely animate with a mouse or even a touchpad if that's what you have. The first thing I do when starting an animation is create a storyboard. This is just a rough sketch of what will actually happen in the animation, and it usually only contains the keyframes. At this stage, I'm not worried about the in-between frames yet. It's more like an animatic that helps me plan out the timing and overall flow before I start animating. For this tutorial, I've created a simple 2-frame storyboard of a dragon that is flying. As you can see, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just a guideline to help plan out the animation before we start drawing the in-between frames. The next step is to draw the keyframes the way you want them to look in the final animation. To do this, I'll use the storyboard as a reference. As you can see, I created a new costume below the original storyboard frame. Then, using the onion skin tool, I traced over the original frame to create a cleaner, more polished keyframe. I'll repeat this process for each of the storyboard frames until all of my keyframes are finished. Now it's time to draw the in-between frames. For smaller motions, I usually add 3 frames between each pair of keyframes. The first in-between frame is usually closer to the first keyframe, and the third is usually closer to the second keyframe. The frame in the middle represents the halfway point of the motion. Sometimes animators use a smear frame for that middle frame to exaggerate fast motion, but I usually just draw a regular in-between frame instead. As you're drawing the in-between frames, it's important to preview the animation frequently to make sure the motion looks smooth. To do this, I like to create a simple animation script that looks like this. I usually set the wait time to 0.09 seconds, which works out to be about 11 frames per second. If you're making a looping animation, you'll also want the motion to play back in the opposite direction. For example, my dragon first flaps its wings downward, so I also want it to flap back up. To do that, I switch the costumes in reverse order using costume number -1. Then place the entire script inside a forever loop so the animation repeats continuously. Now we're at what is often the last step of the animation process, coloring. This is probably my favorite part of the process because it's just satisfying to color fill. When coloring, I recommend using the eyedropper tool to sample your colors. For instance, if you're following a specific color palette, you can hover the eyedropper tool over the palette and click to select the exact color you need. This helps keep your colors consistent throughout the animation. There's not too much else to explain here, so I'll let you watch the rest of the coloring process. Hey everyone! Thanks for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful. This was my first time making a tutorial like this, so if you have any feedback, I'd be happy to hear it. Thanks again for watching, and good luck with your project!